Hi, California FFA. I am sitting next to a very special guest today. We have Lieutenant Cooper, who has agreed to do an interview with us. We are super excited to have you here. Can you briefly describe why you decided to join the Army?
My dad served 24 years in the Army. He enlisted first, and then he went to officer candidate school and commissioned as an officer. He was an armor officer for a number of years, and then retired when I was a sophomore in high school. And so for me, when I thought about what I wanted to do, getting ready to graduate high school, thinking about applying to college, I was really open to wanting something that was different. Like I didn't want just like a stereotypical college experience. That just didn't really suffice in my mind. I wanted something a little bit more, and my mom had actually signed. I expressed this to my parents, and my mom had signed me up for a summer camp at West Point. West Point's the United States Military Academy, and again, I had really no idea of seeing women in the military. My dad at the time, when he was serving in the armor branch, it was not integrated yet, so there weren't women in his roles or as colleagues. There were no women in his unit, and so for me it just was very abstract to think of being a woman in the military. But when I went to West Point for this summer camp, I just found that it was a place where people of all backgrounds, all experience levels, whatever corner of the earth you're coming from, could all come to this place and find themselves working towards one mission, which was service. And I found that so compelling, and I knew that I would be challenged, but that's why I liked it. I knew that I was going to grow as a young woman. And in just meeting so many high school students here so far, it's really a similar idea, is that FFA brings people together to challenge each other, to grow, and to develop a leadership skill in themselves, which I think is really awesome.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you here with us. Obviously, to the viewers, you competed for Miss USA and you won in 2024, correct?
Yes.
What was competing for Miss USA like, and how was the training aspect of that?
Yeah, well, to shed some light on that piece, so August 4th of 2024, I became the reigning Miss USA. So I'm the current Miss USA for this year, and it was a great honor, and it's truly deeply humbling. But I feel like the greatest honor of my life is to know that I'm an Army soldier.
Absolutely.
And to have raised my right hand and to serve this country. But in the pursuit of even wanting to compete at Miss USA, it really started as a childhood dream, and the fact that I had grown up watching the Miss USA pageant with my mom, my sister, even my dad would tune in with us. And so it kind of was like the Super Bowl in our house. And I remember when I was in grad school, I'd won a scholarship coming out of West Point to go to Stanford, and so I was in my first year of my master's program at Stanford, and I called my mom and I said, what's something I've always wanted to do, but really never had the chance to, and I felt like I was the reason I was saying no to myself. I was like, what are you scared of? Are you scared of failure? What is it? And for me, I just said, I'm not gonna limit myself, and I'm not gonna take away an opportunity that I think is there. And so I said, hey, I'm gonna compete. So I competed for Miss Michigan in April of 2024, and then I went to Miss USA. But in that whole process, doing grad school and preparing, the one thing that I always share with students when I get to speak to them is that if you put your mind to something, you will make time for it. And I feel like, it's so rare sometimes in the age of social media where you don't really see someone's journey. You kind of just see the end result. And I always try and shed light on the fact that if you are goal-oriented, if you're intrinsically motivated, if you have discipline, that can be applicable in so many areas, whether it's academic, career, or personal passions. And for me, they've all kind of intersected in the past year, being a grad student at Stanford, being a first lieutenant in the Army, an active duty Army officer, and then being the reigning Miss USA. So I think there's so much that can be taken away from that journey, so I always want to shed some light on that.
Yeah. How do you manage the stress and pressure that comes with a leadership position such as being a lieutenant?
Yeah, well, I always say that, I'm the first active duty Army officer to ever win Miss USA, which is really a huge honor. But I really don't think of it that often, because I think that there is something to be said about just putting your head down, being grounded, and just being rooted in your values. And for me, I've always been rooted in the Army values. The Army values were instilled in me when I was young with my dad. And I just think that being grounded and knowing where you've come from and always being humble to that, that is so, there's something to be said about that, because when you're in a high visible position, or you're just in a leadership role, whether it's an FFA, or if it's, in your high school, wherever it is, it can be a little bit daunting, but I always try and remind people, and even myself, my mom will tell me this, is that, failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. And so if you're always looking at opportunities and looking at challenges even with an optimistic mindset, knowing that you're serving a higher purpose, that will always keep you grounded.
Speaking on leadership, can you describe a little bit what your leadership style is like?
Yeah, well, one thing that I've realized just over, whether it's in the past year or just over the course of my life is that leadership is something that you'll always be evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And the greatest thing that I can say that I've learned is like the most important thing to have is humility, is to know that like you're not always going to have the right answer. And you never really want to be the smartest person in the room. You always want to be able to gain insight and to grow and to progress as a young person, as a leader, because there's so many people around you who want to put all hands in and support you. And I think that really, when I think about my leadership style, it's an evolving thing. I'm a different leader now than I was when I was a cadet at West Point, and that's great. That means that over time, I've continued to have some humility. I've continued to ask questions, be curious. My mom would always say when I was younger, I asked so many questions. But that is a trait that, as a leader, you need to have. You need to be able to know when you don't know something, and just have the humility to ask the question and sit by someone and be a sponge and just learn all that you can.
To the younger generations that are thinking about or already wanting to join the Army, what's some advice that you would give them about the process and about being in the Army?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I always try to share with students, whether they're in college, whether they're in high school, whether they're kind of in limbo, they don't know what their next steps are, is that the Army is an incredible opportunity, no matter how long you choose to serve. Whether you're choosing to serve for 3, 4, 5 years, or you want to make a career out of it, there is something that you will gain holistically about yourself. And that's experience, that's confidence, and that's real world life skills. I mean, the Army is a people business. You work with people all day long, people that you like, people that you don't like. And the thing that I think is so valuable about that is that you learn to work together with them. It's all about service. It's all about being selfless. It's about working towards something that's bigger than yourself as an individual. And I feel like that's really rare sometimes where you find that in a work environment. And so I think that, if you're on the fence or you've thought about it, I always say just do it, because what you gain from it is you can't put a price tag on it, truly.
To some advice for the young FFA students, could you give some advice about the best way to have leadership and the best way to lead a group of people?
Yeah, well, again, I always go back to humility because however long you've been in an environment, however long you've been in a subject matter, you can always learn something. There's always something to learn. So I always, preach to the idea of humility. And then I'd also say is to give yourself some grace too, because, again, you had talked about being in a high pressure, responsibility, things like that. To lead is to serve. If you go into an opportunity giving yourself grace, knowing that you're going to keep service as your North Star, you're gonna do okay, because you know that you're doing this on behalf of the people you're leading, that you're looking to help them, you're looking to resource them. What can you do to support the mission, to support the goal, to support your people, and really putting their needs above your own. Like that truly is the piece of leadership that I think sometimes can get lost if you focus on that pressure. It's really about how you can serve those that you're leading, think of them, think of what they may need, and work together towards accomplishing your goal.
Absolutely. And close out this segment, what is one question that you've always wanted to be asked but you never have, and what would your response be to that?
That's a good question. I think it really wouldn't be a specific question, but I think it's just something that I would love to be able to share with students anytime I get the chance to. I always say, if you can see me, you can be me. That doesn't mean we all got to be Miss USA or join the Army, but it does mean that there's something about my story that I think anyone of any age, any background can take away. Because again, like it's rooted in humility. I've always kept service as my North Star. When I won Miss USA, I was so emotional on stage, but it was because I knew that there was a young girl out there just like me when I was younger who saw me living a very multifaceted life and pursuing excellence in every realm. It's never been, pageantry above my career. It's been service above everything. And that to me has always been my North Star. And anytime that I can, I always just try and share with students that, I have no regrets about my path, that if you live life to your fullest extent, looking to keep service, humility, be values driven, all of those things will put you in the right spot. I think that, dreams and passions are placed in our hearts for a reason. And being the first, I hope that I'm not the last. I hope that there are other people who come after me who continue to lead an ambitious life, who continue to look to serve on behalf of others and just make the most of their time that they have on this earth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your service, and I hope you have an amazing time at the California FFA Leadership Conference.
Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.